I'd like to welcome you officially to the Conversation Cafe, which is a weekly event by the Multi-Faith and Spirituality Center, where we explore topics related to spirituality, human growth, human life. And as we do that, we first of all want to sort of be mindful of where we are. And we're all in our homes, most likely, but we're also located on lands that are originally were lands of indigenous peoples. And Concordia University, and where I am located, is the Ganyangehaga territory, and Tchaghe is traditionally known as is the unceded territory of the Ganyangehaga. And so we want to acknowledge that, and we want to acknowledge our relationship with them, the history, the values, the spirituality they bring to this land, and their connection with many different peoples. So, and it's also a living relationship. It's something we don't just acknowledge, and say and are done with, but we also really want to honor that by the way we live and by the way we connect with each other and with our indigenous friends and neighbors and colleagues. I know some of you are in different territories. I believe Laura, and I think you too, Eric, are on an Algonquin territory, if I'm correct. Is that right?
Yep. So yeah, I'm on Algonquin Anishinaabe land, and actually live about 7 kilometers from CCIP, which is the Great River, the Ottawa-Gatineau River, which was a mega trade route back in the day, and now it's still, I don't know, an important river around here. And certainly there's a lot of talk about the bridges on top of it too.
Right. Bridges to literally cross rivers.
Yeah.
And then they're the bridges we build. So yeah. So thanks, Laura. And I invite you all, if you're on a different land and if you've traveled, to just reflect on where you are, whose land who was first settling on that land millions of years ago, and the bridges we've built physically and figuratively, and the trade routes and journeys we've taken. Maybe it's a great way to think about this. And today we're here to think about EDI. We've invited Laura, who was our interfaith facilitator for many years at the Multi-Faith and Spirituality Center. And Laura is now a specialist, an EDI specialist, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And she is a certified Canadian inclusion professional with lots of experience, and she facilitates programs and workshops, collaborates with different groups, deep experience with working particularly with faith communities, LGBTQ+ groups, and other equity-seeking individuals and communities. And I just thought it'd be fabulous to hear from Laura what she's been doing, what that work involves, what some of the joys and some of the challenges are. So, and so the way we're doing this is we're really trying to create a conversation. Laura and I start up with just some kind of interview style questions, but we really hope that you will ask questions as well, that it's a conversation. And we try to do that respectfully. I sometimes say we try to create safe space for brave conversations, but we also know that the safety is really, we can't guarantee that somebody doesn't say something that might offend me or that might just rub me or challenge me and make me uncomfortable. And sometimes we actually need to do that because that's where the growing and learning takes place. So I hope we can together create a learning space and brave space, and that we can just have a good conversation together. If you need to leave, that's fine. I do like it when you just put a little note in the chat, say gotta go or something, just to know everything's okay. But otherwise we'll talk till about 3 o'clock and learn and grow and be enriched. Let's hear from others. What interests you in the whole EDI work, and what are some questions you'd love to ask Laura when she comes back?
Well, I was hoping to ask her, who has she worked with so far? Has she seen different groups, companies? Where does she go and how does she set things up? What are her main topics that she would start off with? Who has been her toughest crowd?
Those are great questions, Belinda. Eric, your hand is up.
I just had a question. When you're in the EDI line of work, what do you do with the volunteer who turns up and says, "I just want to help out somehow," and they don't have any particular leanings? Like, what are the good entry level tasks for somebody who just turns up with some goodwill?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Okay, so we completely lost Laura. Okay. Welcome, Sandy. We're just having technical difficulties because our actual guest isn't here. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself and try and phone Laura. Just talk to each other, would you?
Sure.
I'm wondering if anybody sees that there are more opportunities or more challenges working in a remote environment, especially with students or in office spaces or campus spaces virtually, with trying to support equity and diversity. That was something that I was thinking about.
Yeah, for
'Cause
sure.
often I find within the faculty, I could have a Zoom open with, 30, 40, 50 plus students. Some of them, don't have their names up or their pronouns or their cameras. They don't participate. So I want to know, as a forward-facing student person, how I can better support and be inclusive in how I direct messages to groups of students and alumni alike. So I was waiting for Laura on that one, but I'm sure there's lots of people in this group who could probably give some suggestions or experiences and relate to that.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, Eric.
It's just that in the federal government, one of the things that remote work has opened up is participation from the regions, which is basically everywhere that isn't Ottawa. And one of the diversity and inclusion topics that comes up there is a lot of people are not able to, they don't have the bilingualism that you have typically in the eastern half of the country, let's say. But the other thing is people are often tied to where they live, and so we're looking at bringing in people from different parts of Canada, including remote regions and Indigenous communities and things like that. So it can be a bit of a, there's ups and downs to that, and just communicating when everybody's in a different time zone is also be challenging. But just give it that opportunity to just expand your geography a bit if you're who's participating in your events like this.
I've noticed that too, Eric, the sort of like the assumed kind of like global sphere of the country when we cover so many different zones. I was often on a call in the evenings outside of work, and everyone's even just ensuring everyone's coming to the table. Some that may be dinner time, some it was like well past dinner time for us on the other half of the country. So yeah, even just like recognizing the geography is important. But yeah, it's also a question I'd love to ask Laura.
So Belinda and well, you want to hear the questions again, and then we can just sort of dive into conversation.
Sure, let's just go for it.
Let's go for that.
Okay, what were the questions?
Okay. I can't even remember all my questions. So I guess the one that I do remember is when you're working with different groups, who was your toughest group so far? What were your biggest challenges?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't want to single out any group in particular, but I guess I would say the biggest challenge for me right now is being able to like continue to hold space for people who really don't get it or don't want to get it. And by get it, I mean kind of don't see their place in taking any responsibility towards enhancing diversity and inclusion in their organization, let's say. So there's that, and that can come in a variety of different groups and people. But that's definitely the biggest challenge, is when you're there to go for a deeper dive and you know other people are ready to go there and really look at the structures and the biases you have in place, but there's so much resistance from 2 or 3 people. And so you end up spending a lot of time catering to the resistance and focusing on their issues with this, rather than actually going somewhere with the dialogue.
Wow.
So that's what I would say is the toughest customers, if you will.
Toughest customers take up space. Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe you can back up on that. Just tell us who are your customers? Like, what's the work you're doing? I'm sort of maybe I'll ask you that question I asked at the very beginning. You know, where has your journey taken you since you've left Concordia?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, I'm a consultant, or I'm a diversity inclusion specialist that works with different organizations across Canada, but I mean, mostly based in the National Capital Region, especially in Ottawa, and a lot with federal and provincial government there. So different government departments, but also different private sector industries, companies, all kinds of organizations. And that work is, I mean, it's a lot of education and training. So I design and facilitate workshops on this topic, but I also do kind of large scale diversity reviews or audits for organizations. So that's when you look at everything from their HR policies and practices to interviewing employees and how they feel about their workplace. You know, do they feel safe and included? And then coming up with recommendations essentially for how they can improve. And I'm enjoying that work a lot more lately, because it feels like you're actually doing something rather than just coming up against the same issues when in conversation with people in workshops. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
Are you self-employed right now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh,
Well, I mean,
that.
I still work for Greybridge, but like I work for a consulting firm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amanda and Eric, you had questions too earlier, so I don't know when you want to feed them in, or if we should just continue. But I guess one question I have is, what motivates you in your work, Laura? And maybe that leads also into the questions Eric and Amanda asked.
Sure. Well, basically what motivates me is that I want to live in a more just and equitable and inclusive society. And this is a way that I found to try to do that. And I think that's something, if we can work towards it and hopefully get closer to it, it's something that's good for me, it's good for you, it's good for all of us who are living and working in Canadian society and globally as well, but you know, just within this realm. And I want that. I think, like, what's the core of that? And I know, Ellie, we talked about this a bit, but I really tried to think about what's at the heart of that motivation. And I think it's actually just care for people. So I care that people feel safe and included and good about where they go every day and what they do. And that's just, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to care for others. And this is a way I've found that works for me, I guess, or that I enjoy at the same time.
That's really cool. I guess you're right. Like, often we think about caring about looking after them or bringing food or serving tea, but to work for justice and inclusion is another really powerful way, and often takes longer because it's like changing culture basically is a long-term goal and takes a long time. So I guess what gives you the stamina to hang in there?
Yeah, that's true. I have to admit the reward in this job, it's very few and far between, like what to see progress be hard when you come up against oh, it's telling you I'm unstable again.
You're good right now.
Okay.
We're a little bit iffy for a minute there. It's all good.
Okay. When I come up against these issues time and again, and that's in part a reason why I'm trying to move away from workshopping all the time, because I do find I'm losing that sense of empathy for people, no matter where they are on their learning journey. And I don't think that's good when that starts to happen, or when your impatience starts to show, because I'm there to hold space for everyone. And if I can't do that, then I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be doing it.
That's one logical conclusion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to constantly to also hold myself to these standards. So I'm on my own personal like learning journey and reflection in EDI matters. So I have to still hold myself accountable and do the work and continue to study and learn and reflect on what I'm doing. And then help other people do the work, which is combined is like it's a big emotional capacity that it takes.
Eric, your hand is up.
Yeah, so just jumping from the helping other people do the work, maybe it's time to bring that question back. Is when you or maybe your client, the local diversity champion or equity person or HR person, when they have a bunch of people coming to their door with a bunch of privilege and not a whole lot of specific knowledge, saying, "I want to help, put me to work." So what's a good first step for those people, or where can they contribute best with kind of limited background in EDI?
Oh, that's such a great question. There's so many things you can do. So if your organization has an EDI committee or just some kind of diversity group, or it could be a committee, or sometimes it's just a learning group or a learning circle where people want to advance their knowledge on EDI stuff, you can do that. But I've found that organizations that have some kind of committee on this topic are the ones that make the most progress, because there's a group of committed people who are all trying to do the work. And especially if it's a large organization, they're all kind of embedded in different departments of wherever that is, and act as like communicators and just catalysts for the work. They're always bringing that lens to their meetings, their conversations. So that's one idea. And I mean, another way is just to, I guess, be willing to make yourself uncomfortable, or to acknowledge that relationships are complex sometimes, especially in the workplace. So if you see situations where you can use your power or privilege to kind of stop discrimination or to call in or call out, then I would encourage you to do that.
So that leads me to sort of another question. When we were talking last week, we talked a lot about our own place and our own identity. And I guess one question I ask myself, and I'd love to hear your answer, is how do we as people who are white or present as white, how do we, use our own identity? And we're a whole lot more than just our ethnicity or our race, but how do we bring our own identity into that work? And how do you do that? Love to hear your personal perspective.
Yeah, I've come to see, like, doing this work as a white person, I've come to see it as so vitally important that I'm involved in dismantling discrimination and working towards equity. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with so many managers and leaders in really high positions who say to me repeatedly, I know there's microaggressions on my team, or I know this is happening, but I just don't know what to say, or I don't want to embarrass this person, and I don't want to create tension, or I don't want to do X, Y, Z. So, you know, if I had something for all that silence is perpetuating the prejudice in your workplace and in our world. So the capacity, I mean, anyone can call in and call out, but when it comes from leaders in particular, it's so powerful. Like, they set the tone. And so it's like, it crushes me now to hear this time and again, well, I just don't know what to say, and I don't want to. It's like, okay, but you need to hold yourself accountable and hold others accountable. And that's part of what doing this work is. So I've come to see my role. And by the way, it's not to diminish or demean what managers and leaders are doing in these roles, because I also want to say that I see myself in that. And I in reflecting, I think I used to be like that too, and sometimes still can. I'm not perfect in this. But yeah, I used to be not wanting to make waves, or like, oh, I don't want to say anything, especially if you don't have a lot of power, let's say, in your role or just in this situation. So I can empathize with that. And now that I see it on a larger scale, I really see my role in using my power for good.
Do you have any examples to sort of illustrate that? I know you can't sort of talk about companies or institutions, but maybe you can think of something when you were at Concordia and how you would handle that differently, or at the MFSC.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, sometimes these things are so small, like it could just be a small comment. I remember doing a workshop with staff, like, I think it was at Concordia, who knows, but I was talking about religious differences and giving some statistics about the religious makeup of Canada. And I quoted something as, you know, Jews only make up 1% of the population. I don't know if that's still accurate, but it might be something close to that. And someone just reacted very surprised to that and said, oh, wow, I'm surprised. I guess they're more vocal, or something that was, you know, just like a small comment about a group of people that some people may not have even noticed, but someone like me, who's maybe more in tune to this stuff, I live and breathe religion and diversity, picks up on that. And I didn't say anything, or perhaps, you know, at the time, I don't know if I knew how to react or what to do about that. But looking back, that's an example. That would be a great opportunity to say, oh, what did you mean by that? Or what do you mean to say? Or just say, ouch. You know, sometimes that's interrupt someone to say, ouch. Like, wow, where did that come from? Or, you know, it doesn't always have to be it doesn't always become this huge issue. And also, you don't have to call out all the time. You can also call in and discuss it with the person privately.
That's a new term for me. I know call out, but I haven't heard call in. So call in is afterwards you would go up to that person and ask what they meant or something?
Yeah, calling in is basically that. It's deciding not to address it as a group, but to do it in private. So if you are worried about, and often this is something I tell people who, you know, who don't want to, let's say, call out their boss in front of everyone in a meeting. So you don't want to put someone on the spot or embarrass them, but you can address it later, and maybe it's less uncomfortable to do it privately.
Okay.
There's a whole school of thought on this stuff in EDI on whether to call in or call out. And there's different perspectives on this. And some people should say you should call out all the time, no matter what. And how are we all going to learn if we don't do that? But I think the reality is not everyone's able or willing it, or, you know, they're worried it'll put their job on the line, or who knows, you know, we can't always do that. So you can call in also.
Okay. And again, and see your hand up, Eric, that's great. And but I also, whoops, sorry, something's beeping. But I also want to encourage others, if you have questions, to raise your hand, or if you can't unmute yourself, feel free to put them in the chat. But Eric, go ahead.
You're just calling in and calling out. I'm wondering what sort of a relationship or what sort of position does that presuppose? Is it something you can do with any sort of relationship with the callee, or are there particular conditions where it's a better or worse idea?
To whether to call in or call out specifically? Is
I
that
guess
what
call
you're...
in, call out, or in fact, leave it to somebody else. Although, yeah, it sounds like maybe leaving it to somebody else is not a great option. But what sort of what can help you decide what to do?
Well, I mean, I would say the context matters a lot. Like, what is the situation where this is happening in? And what are the power dynamics? So again, are you in a class and this is your professor who said something, and maybe you don't want to be in the spotlight as, you know, that person who calls out your teacher? Or again, if it's your boss, maybe you don't want to be, you know, stick your neck out like that. But I mean, kudos if you do, and if you can. And also, if you are the person who's in power, then I encourage you to say something, because your power is exponential then. So if you're the only, I don't know, white man in the room, then it's like, wow, if it comes from you, there's just so much more power behind that, because we're in a white dominant culture in general. Is that helpful at all? Just the context really. Sorry?
Yeah, I think that's helpful, and that's kind of some of the stuff I guess maybe it's choosing the in or out. I don't know if you have any particular remarks on that in terms of preserving relationships or using your position effectively.
Yeah, again, I would say it comes down to the context of that relationship. If it's your close friend, you'll probably be calling in. You'll just have a conversation together. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thanks.
I guess we talked a lot about, when we talked last week to prepare for this, we talked a lot about just the lived experience and that we all bring. And I'm just really still, you know, thinking a lot about that, because I mean, so much what you talk about, it sort of depends on context. That actually also demands a lot of each person, that we sort of understand the context, or understand is a big word, but you know, that we're aware of our privilege, we're aware of our power. I mean, I have power as a white person, I also have power as the head of the department, but I have, you know, not power as maybe as a queer person or something. But so just to constantly sort of evaluate and constantly learn demands a lot of each of us. So do you have any thoughts on that, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I mean, so for myself, I also bring my lived experience as a queer woman to these situations. And I think sometimes that could be a really powerful way to establish connection with others, or certainly with other underrepresented people and communities who might be in the room or on your team or in your classroom. So for myself, I mean, it's an invisible difference, but for others, it's not. So I can choose whether to share that or not. And again, that comes with with power, if you will. But so for myself, I use that as a point of connection to relate with others, and to know what it's like to be the only one in the workplace or the room, or etc. So I think most people who are from underrepresented groups or individuals, they are aware of the context all the time. So I don't know that, I think really it's more for people who have never had to reflect on their identity, or to worry about whether or not they can get in the room, or whether they're, you know, totally able-bodied, or just, there's all these different dimensions that we bring, and people who have those differences, especially when they're visible, they're aware of the context. They always know if they're the only Black person in the room, you know? So I think it's more white people who are maybe grappling with that, with how to understand the context or read the room, if you will.
Just going to scan for hands up or questions, comments. Yes, Amanda.
Hey, Laura.
Hey.
So nice to see you. I had a question, just because now we're working in this virtual world, right? Campus is virtual. A lot of times we're meeting with groups of students, and often cameras aren't on, names don't match. How do you circumnavigate trying to be really inclusive to everybody there and reading that context when so much is in the dark?
Okay, wait, because normally you would meet with them in person and see them?
Yeah, and you know, if we go back a year, I would be meeting students one-on-one in my office. So it's much more easy as a forward-facing advisor to be able to be sensitive and acutely aware of context, as you said. But now often I'm meeting with students, it could be one-on-one, or it could be in a group, and it's a black screen, and it's sometimes just an ID number. I have very little prompts to be able to try to contextualize. And, you know, in advising, it's always, 5% of what you get, but the other 95 is something that you have to acutely, intuitively, feed and bring into the advising.
That's really interesting. Okay. I love this. This is like Ask a D&I expert hour. I love it. Oh, bye, Tina. Okay, I would ask yourself, what do you normally do? And then try to fill in any gaps there. So I would kind of put on what I would call like an inclusion lens. So to ask yourself, like, in what ways is what I'm doing, could it be more inclusive? Or like the way I'm going to ask this question, would someone from, I don't know, an ESL background fully understand these words, this language? Am I using jargon, for example? Is my camera on so that everyone can see me, and maybe it helps because they could see my lips moving if they don't understand everything? Or, if you actually Google inclusion lens, a bunch of handbooks or tip sheets will come up that will help you guide that process, I think. And by the way, Ellie, Belinda, this might be of interest too for you. For one day when we're back to planning events in person, York U has a really good list an inclusive event planning kit, basically, that helps you ask all these questions for how to make your events more inclusive. So basically, Amanda, that's kind of from that perspective that you want to look at things. So think of all the different diversity dimensions you could possibly imagine, and ask questions to yourself, like, does this appeal to someone who's trans, to someone who's Black? Just different questions like that to get the wheels turning. Yeah. You have a follow-up?
I thank you. That's great. And I'm going to also look at York and check out the inclusion lens and Google that. The one thing that I have discovered, which is kind of, there's always a silver lining to these new ways of delivering everything and connecting, is that I've had a small group, but a very interesting group of students that otherwise have no advising history on SIS whatsoever. They never come. And now that they can do it with a closed screen anonymously, and that is a safe space for them to say what's really going on and what they need, that to me, it's a great gift at the same time that we're living in this virtual world, because I've had students who have said that they have profound anxiety, and for the first time that they are now successful in their academics because they're not physically in a classroom and they feel that they can reach out for support. So there are some good things coming out of that. And I'm finding that, you know, I'm trying to reshape and recontextualize how I'm seeing things to understand that that black window with no video is often not a sign of disconnection, but rather a sign of deeper connection for some students.
Yeah, absolutely. And so definitely this has been amazing for some folks, especially persons with disabilities as well. Who don't have to figure out how to physically get somewhere and do this thing, as well as things like anxiety or different mental health challenges. But also I noticed I noticed this right away when our workshops went virtually, is that there's more space for introverts, because they will take their time to, you know, think about things and pop it into the chat, because they may not be comfortable saying it in the moment, or they just take longer to process it, and it'll come out in the chat a bit later, which is kind of a great feature that we wouldn't get in person.
I'd like to pick out on that emotional piece too. Amanda, you raised that sort of with anxiety or whatever. But I guess, Laura, I want to know from you, like always working for justice and always sort of changing, being in the work of culture change and changing the world, it takes a lot of emotional energy. And so I just want to know if you have any reflection on that. And sort of the other question that we talked about a bit was what gives you hope, or where is there hope?
Yeah.
So 2 questions, really. Big ones.
Yeah, that's something I struggle with a lot, actually, to be honest, is feeling hopeless, especially sometimes because the organizations or the people you're working with are just not willing to engage. So you're feeling like you're, you know, steering the ship against the tide kind of thing. So it's hard to maintain that momentum. But I mean, I've found, I guess, community or something bolstering with other D&I people. So my colleagues, and there's other communities like on LinkedIn that I tap into that helps to bolster, like, yeah, this is why we're doing it. And, or just to vent, like, oh my God, I had the worst workshop and I can't believe we're still talking about this. And just to, you know, unload that piece and then be able to come back and do the work from a fresh perspective. So yeah, it definitely does take a toll. And some days I'm not hopeful that things will change, or it just really feels are so immersed in the work, it feels like it possibly changed fast enough. And it's hard to remember that some people are just coming around to this and they're just waking up to the idea of inclusion. And yeah, I think as I alluded before, it's hard to always have capacity for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, I think finding ways to connect with others in the field has been helpful.
Okay. And the other thing you said last week that really struck me or gave me courage, I guess, is that the particular roles that universities play in this world and this work of EDI. So
yeah, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see what's going to happen with universities in this space. Because so yes, I find they're late to the game with just coming up with, I mean, a lot of universities are only just creating these equity and diversity roles now. But I feel that they have huge momentum because of the way universities are organized. You're surrounded by experts, right? So you can tap into the expertise of so many different kinds of people. You know, they're used to having committees, everything's a meeting, you know, they're used to organize in that way.
For better or for worse, we always have
Yes,
meetings, right?
better or for worse. But you know, a lot of places don't. And so there's that's key. And also there's this, I mean, there's huge diversity, of course, with international students and with age differences. Bye, Munir, nice to see you. And also the thing that I miss the most and that I feel like every organization needs are students, because so much change at least when I was working there, was propelled by the students. I mean, they have great ideas, they're excited about things, they want to see things change, and they hold staff and accountable a lot of the times, which is so important. A lot of organizations really do not have any accountability system like that, where you're constantly being pushed. So I think that's really a gift. And I think like EDI might be slow to start where you're at, but I feel like it could take off. That's my personal take on it.
So that's really a great for all of us who are, well, not all of us are in the university, but we have all been in a university and sort of understand that. But it is a great place to always be pushed. And I remember when I came to Concordia, I was, you know, just older than the students, but still fairly young. And I all of a sudden felt I was part of the establishment. Whereas before I'd always been the one pushing, and all of a sudden now I was like the one set in. But I really enjoy that interplay and that many of the great ideas that we have in the MFSC come from a student idea. Or, you know, at Concordia, I think of the whole sustainability movement all started with a few students.
Yeah, that's right.
And I just think there's some great precedents and stories that we need to tell. And it's one of the few really intergenerational institutions, large institutions.
Yeah, it's true. I'm excited. So you know what? That's actually your answer to what that gives me hope. I actually feel like excited thinking about that. Like, oh yeah, this could really go somewhere.
Always happy to give you hope, Laura.
Yeah.
And I think for me, we need to encourage one another, because I guess I look at the EDI lens very much through the lens of faith, and I'm often discouraged that faith is really just being pushed out, you know, and yet all of a sudden universities are cluing in that students, you know, are actually feeling left out because of their faith. And there's a big revelation and going like, yes, I've been saying this for years. So so I think there in that interplay and that conversation, and again, it's about the support from community that I just think is helpful for me to listen to you and get ideas, and I hope it's similar for others. So
Yeah, Ellie, it's interesting. Another reflection I had in thinking about this event was I actually haven't talked about religion since I left working at MFSC.
You haven't? That's
I
all you
haven't.
ever talked about.
That's all I ever talked about for 10 years. And now nobody wants to hear it.
Wow.
Well, it's just not, like you just mentioned Bill 21 last week too, when we were chatting. I was like, wow, nobody talks about that. I mean, in Ontario, where I mostly work, there is zero discussion about this. Whereas I'm sure it's like the biggest thing you're thinking or talking about with others.
Sadly, it's actually not very much on the forefront anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. That's really the sad part, because it really does affect people. I don't want to say a few people, but particular parts of the student body and of the population. But it really is not on the forefront anymore. And I wish it was, and I wish religion was. And, especially right now, there's so many amazing holidays happening right now.
Yeah.
Ramadan started today, I believe. I haven't officially heard of that the moon was sighted, but I believe it started today. And we just finished Passover and Easter, and
it's Viseki.
Viseki is coming up, and all sorts of other things. And what an opportunity to talk and learn from one another, and live that diversity that's there for us just to enjoy and benefit from and grow through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're almost at the end of our time, or we are, but we had a little bit hiccup at the beginning. So I just, first of all, thanks everyone for hanging in. And Laura, I know that can be hard as a presenter to all of a sudden deal with technical difficulties or other difficulties. So thank you for hanging in there. But I want to give people another chance to ask a question or make a comment about anything you heard, or maybe something you've learned or would like to keep talking about some other time. Just take a minute to think about it or put it in the chat. Lavanya says, thanks, Laura. It's great to hear from you and everyone else. I love it when...
Thanks, Lavanya.
Yeah, so great when former students come back.
Eric, did you say you work in the public service? You're at StatsCan?
Yes, I'm at StatsCan and working. I sit on the diversity. What do we call it? The Diversity Forum for Positive Space. So.
That's awesome. So you know then that you have a diversity and inclusion lens for the public service?
Yeah, I guess it was, you got the GBA Plus, which is, I guess, going to be rebranded at some point, but that seems to be the handbook to go to if you're looking for your D&I lens. And definitely there's much afoot in terms of trying to get organized and do better, and particularly now look at beyond the traditional EE groups in the public service. And if I get started, I might keep talking for a while, but yeah, there's a lot of hope and a lot going on.
That's great that you're involved, though. I know some people involved in that, but it may not be the same anymore. Some folks from Global Affairs. Anyway, good. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so I just want to give others the opportunity. We often close by saying a word, and I mean a word or a phrase of something we either learned or we reflected on, or that made us think, or we want to explore more. So just want to invite people to do that. You can also write that, and then, as often happens, we just sort of raise a whole bunch of issues and questions, and I guess the answer in this is really in the living it out. Thanks for convening this. I'm going to bring back some of this hope and energy to work. Awesome, Eric. Mark says being open to being uncomfortable for however it was phrased was a good challenge, Laura.
Yep. And just living with complexity is something I tried to remember on a daily basis. So yeah, there's being uncomfortable, which, you know, it can be hard to do, especially every day. Sometimes it's nice to sit in our comfort zone. But I try to think of it more as just living with complexity. Not everything is just simple and black and white or yes or no.
And Amanda says, being aware of silences and always with a lens to contextualize the other's experience, holding space. Mark says, thank you. All right.
Thanks, everyone. This was really fun. It was nice to have the opportunity to reflect in this way and to talk about D&I with everyone.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's great to see. Great to see you haven't forgotten us at the MFSC.
Of course not.
Of course not. And yeah, great to see so many former students and MFSCers coming back. That's really great. And I really believe that, you know, for me in the work, I just need to be inspired and pushed regularly because I think the work is, we need to talk about it and reflect, but more importantly, we need to walk the walk. So thanks for that encouragement and reflection. And just a little announcement, we have one more cafe next week. It's a totally different topic. That one is on poetry and play. So we have a poet and writer and a teacher of poetry, Greg Santos, coming to lead us in a workshop. No writing experience required. It's going to be a lot of fun. So next Tuesday at 2 p.m. So that's next week. You find all the info on our Facebook and webpage. And I will download this one and edit it so that we take all of the sort of technical difficulties out at the beginning. And but thank you so much for coming and for joining that conversation. So be well, everyone.
Thank you.